So in the previous video, we modeled the roof, we modeled the staircase. Now let's take our focus and do some more openings. And so if we look at our drawings here, on the second floor, on the back side of the second floor, we have this 64 by 82 inch patio door. I also find this kind of weird too. Like, I would normally keep all the windows and doors the same. So if the bottom level is 84 inches, I'd probably keep the top part 84, but the drawings say 82, so we're going to stick with that. So 64 by 82. Where is this door? So we have, from the exterior, we are 7 plus 3'4", so let's call that 4'1" in. So let's go to the center. So let's go to our SketchUp here, and we're going to go 4 feet 1 in. So I'm just going to draw this. Actually, let's open up our group here. Let's open up our wall group, and let's go 4'1" in, 4 feet 1 inch. And we want to go back to here, and so we're 64 by 82. So 64 wide, so 64 divided by 2. Let's find our point. So 64 divided by 2 is 32. So we're going to go 32 this way. And then we'll just go 64 all the way back the other direction. And then we are 82 inches tall. So let's go up 82. And let's find our point there. And so now that we have our opening, it's pretty easy. We can extrude this in. So let's extrude this in like this. And we have our kind of hole into our building here. Now that we have that our hole, let's close this. Let's close our group. And we want to model the door as kind of its own separate group. So let's start by tracing this opening. Fully trace it. We can select this opening now, and we can make it a group or a component. Let's actually make it a component. And we're going to call this sliding door. And what I'm going to do for my naming convention, I'm just going to call it D for door, and I'm just going to write D sliding. And then I'm going to write our size, which is 64 by 82. And that's just to keep myself organized. So you could call it door sliding, you could call it just sliding door, whatever you want, but I'm trying to create a bit of a hierarchy for myself, and so I don't need to write out the whole word door. And I'll do the same with the window. I'll just say W, and I'll put the size of that window or description and then the size. So just a way to kind of get this to work. So we have this here. Let's go to edit our component. And so we have this here now. And so let's work on this door. So what does our door look like here? So let's go back to our drawings. Let's go to our elevations. And I believe this door is a sliding door. And so it looks like we have maybe a little bit of a subframe, and then we actually have the door panels. So let's model that. So we're going to offset in. And we're going to offset in 1.5 inches. And even with a door, you would typically have that on the bottom and on the top, because you would have some sort of track on the bottom. Often what will happen in construction, we will sometimes actually recess that down, or what actually happens is, it's not necessarily too crazy of an idea, is the track is pretty thin, but you put the track on the subfloor, so that when you put your flooring inside, it hides and buries 3/4 of an inch in that track, so the track only might stick up a tiny bit, but your flooring is really what's covering it. If we have big complex sliding doors, I have some that are like 3 inches thick, we'll actually like drop them down within the framing so that they sit flush, but that's obviously really complicated to do, but it is possible. So I'm sure some of you probably have some sort of track at your family's place or your grandparents' place, or something that's really old and really thick and ugly, and you probably tripped and hit your foot on it and it just hurts. So nowadays, I mean, it's a little bit better, but we can also improve that further. So let's start with this frame here, and let's actually delete our center part here, and let's extrude this in our width of our wall. So let's extrude in, and let's go in our 5.5 inches, like that. So we've got our door there. Our bottom track maybe is a little bit thinner, so let's maybe go down a 1/2 inch. So it's a little bit thinner. And that ends up being our door frame. We can actually grab all of this and we can make it a component if you wanted to. So we could call this door frame. I'm not going to be too specific with that, but I'm basically at a component within a component. And so that could be a useful way to do that. We could also make it a group. I'm just going to make it a component though. So now here's the next part. We want to cut this opening in half, and we want to essentially make a door panel because it's a sliding door, so there's 2 panels. And so let's extrude this in, and let's extrude this in 2 inches. And I'm going to hide our walls on our second floor here, and let's actually hide our roof as well. So, and our ceiling, so we can kind of see the inside of this. And so you can see how our door panel doesn't go all the way in. And so let's select all this now, and let's make this a component as well. Make component, and let's call this door panel. And so here's kind of the cool part of this. Let's offset this, or let's pull this in a. Let's maybe move it in like 1 inch. And so what we can actually do now is we can copy this door panel. And the reason why I'm doing this copy part first is I think it ends up being a little bit more interesting when you can see both door panels. The other thing is one door panel is offset from another because they're sliding, right? So you have to have them offset. But here's kind of also the other weird thing when it comes to a sliding door, and this might be a weird kind of concept, but the doors are actually not they're not half. They're actually more than half, because when you think about a sliding door, if they were half and they were just touching by like a little tiny point, air would be constantly pushing through there. And so kind of a weird concept. The door is actually a little bit bigger than half, but it is. So let's actually grab this door here, and what we're going to do, they are the same component, which is going to do some weird stuff. But let's make it a 1/2 inch bigger. And if we make both doors a 1/2 inch bigger, it's going to make that overlap 1 inch. So it's going to have a little bit more overlap. And so let's close that for a second. And what's going to happen, what did I close? Close group? No, close component. What's going to happen is it's actually going to push this door past our frame. So we just want to actually move this over a little bit now. So I'm just going to move it past, and then I'm going to move it back. And just to prove my point, let's actually hide this frame. So now you can see our door panels slightly overlap like that, right? So we went 1/2 inch bigger per panel. Now we have like a 1 inch overlap that we can actually have a gasket or something in there to seal those. And so, okay, let's edit our group now even more. Let's go and edit group, or edit component, sorry. And so what we can do here now is we can offset this in. This one can be pretty simple. Let's offset in maybe, let's go 2 inches. Maybe let's do a little more. Let's do 3 inches. And so those are our panels. And then let's kind of extrude this in maybe 1/2 inch. And using that other function we did with extruding twice, we can actually hit the control button and it'll leave that face. And so now this is kind of extruded in twice. And that glass is just like a paper thin piece of glass. Again, you can model that as 2 separate panes, but now that we extruded all the way through, we see the inside. And we can grab this piece again, and if we just look here, we can just verify we're not moving the outside part, and we're not. So now we can just bring this in 1/2 inch. And so now we have 2 layers of our glass, and if we go into our materials, We can apply a material to them. So let's go to glass, and let's paint our both inside and outside layers of this. And we paint this. So now you can actually physically see that we have the two layers there, right? So that starts to be really cool. So now we have these two sliding doors. They're both the same. Pretty easy to kind of get that to work like that. It's a very simple patio door, nothing really crazy. But let's just let's close this component. Let's unhide our frame, and so now we have this kind of sliding door here. And so this was pretty cool. Let's close this component. Now what I can do, let's just copy this to the side for a second and hit the control button. Let's just say we have one more pane. So this is 64 wide, so let's make it another 32. So let's make that 96 wide, right? Does that math work? I don't know. So to make this adjust, let's go to Make Unique. And when we make unique, it's going to have a new name. So let's now call this, instead of 64, 1, let's make it 96. 96 by 82. And so what we'll do is we'll edit our frame component. And before we edit it, we can make unique. I'm probably not going to rename the interior parts. I'm only just going to rename the overall part, and these ones I'm just going to duplicate. So we'll make this unique. And let's extrude this over 32 inches. And then let's extrude the inside part over 32 inches. And let's close that component. And then now what we'll do here is let's copy our door over. And so if this door was a multi-slide, meaning that all panels slide to one direction, what we would have to do is make this frame deeper. If it's a single panel slide, we could just copy this outer panel. So let's you know what? Let's make a copy of it, or let's do it this way first, and then I'll make a copy of it and show what it would look like in a multi-slide. So let's grab this outer panel here, and let's hit the control button to copy. And we're going to copy this directly over. And this gets a little bit more complicated because I think we may need a little bit more overlap, or we need to change our door. So we probably should make our door 1 inch smaller, just based on our math we did before. So let's move that over, maybe 2 inches smaller because of that overlap. So 1 inch is the out. Let's make it 2 inches smaller. And so let's edit this outer component. And make this 2 inches smaller. So that's kind of how you take a double door and make it a triple. So let's close that. So that's our triple now. Let's close that again. And we didn't duplicate our door panel. So our door panel is actually the same for all of these. So if I were to go in and add a handle or something, that handle will show up in all these different panels. And what that also might mean is we might want to flip where the handle is. Maybe the handle is on one part. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to do that. But you could theoretically do that. To finish off our thought on this being a multi-slide, let's move it. And we're just going to hit the C button to copy it. And what I'll do here is we'll make this unique again. And I'm just going to rename this door to be, let's get rid of the materials here. Instead of being sliding, we'll call it multi-slide. So multi-slide or multi-sliding. And then over here, I'm actually just going to flip this this panel here to the inside. And you can see here that we just need to make our frame ever so slightly bigger. So let's just make our frame unique. And like I said, I'm not going to bother renaming the frame because it's a subcomponent, but we would just have to make our frame a little bit thicker. So our frame would probably get 2 inches deeper. And so that's one thing that we've kind of learned over the last few years, especially with doing a lot of multi-slides, is when we end up having a multi-slide, we actually go to like a 2x8 wall often, because it's just easier for the contractor to frame a deeper wall than to like fur it out, or we might do a double wall. So we'll do a 2x6 wall on the exterior, and then we may do another 2x4 wall in bar to that somewhere to kind of get that thickness that we need for a multi-slide. Obviously, it's pretty simple with 3 panels. It's not that thick. But if we have like 4 or 5 panels, it could be like, 12 inches wide and becomes really thick. So anyways, that's kind of how to do the multi-slide. We did the roof, we did the stairs. So a lot of different elements for you to be able to model now. And windows are really the same. So if you want to watch the previous class, I did a window instead of doing the multi-slide doors. So that could be an option and something that you would do as well. So.